On November 21st, 1992, Tom Monfils disappeared after a workplace dispute. A day later, his body was found in a pulp vat with a 50-pound weight wrapped around his neck. Over 30 years later, exactly who killed Monfils remains a mystery. Welcome to the Monfils 6 podcast. My name is Damon Schneider.
My name's Mike Putchell.
Episode 9 is entitled The Mill. So we're going to be talking first about the paper-making process being sort of the backbone of the community of Green Bay. What do you think was meant by that, Mike, in terms of what the authors stated in the chapter?
I think the backbone describing Green Bay shows how much the paper industry really supported that community. It was a huge industry. It's why Green Bay is what it is now.
And if you could get a job at one of these paper mills, you were sort of set for life, as we said before. So 4 men are needed to operate these huge paper-making machines. You have the machine tender, sort of the leader, the back tender, which is sort of the second in command, and then you have the third and the fourth hand. So Tom was the fourth hand. Is that correct, Mike?
The fourth hand he was on the day he went missing, but he was known to also be third hand and occasionally the back tender. He never had the top job, though, of the machine tender.
And the machine tender made the most money. In fact, there was an incident once. Can you describe Tom getting into a little bit of a spat with another employee over his position on the machine?
Yeah, there was a kind of an interesting exchange that he had with someone who Tom's wife thought was a friend of his, but not really the case. They were just talking one day, and Carl was the other guy's name, and Tom and him were talking, and Carl was the machine tender that day, and Tom kind of made a comment to him where he said something along the lines of, you better watch out, Carl, because one of these days you're going to be the fourth hand and I'm going to be the machine tender running things. So kind of an odd thing to say, a bit a veiled threat. I don't know how that would happen, but that's what he said.
A good crew can complete a roll change or turnover without breaking off the sheet of paper coming from a machine. And we actually have a short clip here where Tom is actually creating an employee training video talking about doing the turnover. Let's just take a listen now.
After paper has been made, it's reeled up into a fiber core on a reel spool. After a roll is as large as is desired, a new roll is started with a second core. This on-the-run process of transferring the sheet from a finished roll to a new core is called a turnover. Here Tom Monfils is applying a 2-sided tape to the core. The tape is used to make the sheet stick to the core during a turnover.
So again, the machines, which are known as Yankee dryers, are absolutely huge. Their job is to take wet pulp stock in on one end and transform it into paper by the time it reaches the other end. The machines require a bare minimum of 3 workers. If the fourth cannot work, then they take his pay and divide it among the other 3. Do you think that's a fair process?
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually surprised when I read that, but I would imagine that that's probably a rule that the union required the company to do.
So these turnovers are a big part of basically what Tom Monfils' job is doing. Most of his job is just doing these turnovers. Paper samples are cut from parent rolls every hour and brought to the lab for testing. And I just wanted to bring up a point here that if every hour these are tested, then there's a problem here because if the Monfils 6 cut off Tom Monfils' legs and threw him into a pulp vat to hide his body, wouldn't it be the case that the lab would pick up on that, his blood mixing with the pulp? Don't you think, Mike?
Yeah, they would have saw that something was weird with the mixture of the pulp, and then they would have checked out the chest to see what was going on.
So it seems strange that the police would have thought that that would have been a place that the Monfils 6 would have wanted to hide the body because it would have been found out fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So the men take breaks in these airlock compartments called coops while they're waiting for the turnover. Can you give us a picture of what these coops are like?
Yeah, so my impression of them is they're kind of like these little rooms, I think like 12 by 18, they said, 12 by 18 feet. They're mostly there to keep the computers at a good running temperature because it is pretty hot in the building. But since they have these little air-conditioned rooms, they're used as a break room as well. So, they just have some tables, chairs set up, and phone in there, and coffee maker, microwave, just a place for people to cool down a little bit, get away from all the noise and dust and heat from the shop floor.
And they can also make phone calls in these coops as well. So basically, they're spending a lot of time in these coops waiting for these turnovers to take place. And this particular coop was Coop 7. So the day of November 21st, when Kutska comes in and plays the tape, it occurs in Coop 7. If you'd like to check out our Instagram page, which is the Monfils 6, we have a layout of where everything occurred at the James River plant on that day. So Coop 7 is on the second floor, and the tissue chest is where Monfils' body was found, is very near Coop 7 as well. Now, the authors go on to talk about Kutska's having nothing to live for line that Monfils said, when in fact Kutska was 41 years old and he owned an old farm and 36 acres of land with his wife Artis and his son Clayton. He also owned a rental home in Swamico. So in your estimation, does Kutska have something to live for?
Yeah, and it's not just because of those properties that you mentioned. I always thought that when Tom said that, he just said that as a way to belittle Keith and make it sound like he's more dangerous than he really is. I just think Tom said it because he just flat doesn't like Keith.
What about his other workers in the mill? Was Monfils well liked?
I think by some people, I'd say a select group, and that select group might be as low as like 5 people. They said that Tom had he was a very kind of a reclusive individual is the vibe that I get from him, where he didn't go around and talk with everybody, but he had just a small group of people that he hung around with. And that small group, I think, I don't know if they liked him a lot, but they were okay working with him. I think there's much more evidence laid out that there were more people who disliked Tom than liked Tom.
Yeah, that's what the authors stated. I got that impression as well. What about his work ethic?
Yeah, and that's what I was actually gonna to add, is that when I say that there were more people who disliked him, it was really based on more his work ethic. It does not sound like his work ethic was well respected at all. To me, I get the impression that Tom liked kind of doing the bare minimum, and also he liked doing it in his own way, which they even say that he was kind of considered like an independent operator, which kind of wanted me to bring up. I would really be interested to know what his service record was like in the Coast Guard, because, I mean, being in the military, you can't operate in your own way. You kind of have to follow the order of things. And so that's something that always struck me as bizarre, that he was even in the military and then in the Coast Guard. I don't see him doing well in a place like that, because he clearly shows that he, in James River, he likes to do things his own way.
Memento mori. Remember, you must die someday. However, your life can be remembered forever by contacting us at seasonsoflifememorials.com. We are here to teach you how to create a film about your life that can be seen at your future gravesite, as well as within the obituary section of your very own newspaper. Contact us today at seasonsoflifememorials.com. Mike, can you talk about our weatherproof stickers?
Yeah, I'll talk about that for a little bit. So, in the past, we have talked about the sticker of the single QR code and how that is used as the main way of accessing the memorial video or whatever service that somebody chooses to do for the loved one. There is another option, a little bit more of a more inclusive, more to offer option, where instead of just the one QR code of the single video or the Instagram page or whatever, you can have a QR code up to 4 for QR code links to their video, QR code links to maybe their favorite song that person really liked listening to, QR codes maybe to their favorite books, QR codes to their maybe a favorite recipe that they like to make, anything. The options are completely up to the individual or the family, friends of the individual. So there's a little bit more to it. There can also be a photo component as well on the sticker. It's quite expensive to include a photo on the gravestone of somebody, and to have that done, by a professional who's engraving the stone. And with this, it can just be something we have on the sticker included for as little as $1 to add this. And if people want to change it up, change QR codes, change photos, again, just another $1, easy to do. This all came about kind of from a quote that you and I were talking about, where it goes like this: when writing the story of your life, don't let anyone else hold the pen. And that's kind of just an encapsulation of what this is all about, is that, this is about you, this service that we offer, the life that somebody led. So it's really good. It's a great way to kind of craft your story by reaching out to us. And, if you want your life to be remembered after you pass on, or if a loved one passes on, this is a great way to do that.
And these stickers, these weatherproof stickers, will last a good 5 to 10 years. There's 2 stickers per sheet, so potentially 10 to 20 years. They're about half of a size of a sheet of paper, and we can produce these for as little as $1. So if you needed a replacement, we can get you one very quickly and very cheaply. And we're back. So one of Keith Kutzka's coworkers was a man named David Webster, and they had talked on Monday, November 16th, and had decided that it was probably Monfils who had called even though they had not yet heard the tape. How were they able to figure that out?
Well, they had narrowed it down to Tom and one other person, and I don't know. I mean, I think, when you work with people for years, I think you kind of get to know who would maybe do something like that. And based on what they wrote about in this chapter about Tom, it wouldn't be surprising to me at all that they would have suspected him, because Tom was known to turn people in for stuff. And I think that's another reason why he wasn't very well liked. He seemed kind of like a backstabber, frankly. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting that you brought that up, because the local newspapers like the Press Gazette, they, after Monfils had been found, they kind of portrayed him as the ideal employee, didn't they?
Yeah, but you see that all the time with people who die horrific deaths. They're always portrayed as an angel. That's rarely the case, though. There's always a balance.
Yeah, one of the things this chapter did well is to give you a sense of who Monfils kind of was. And yeah, it kind of came across as that this picture that he had been painted in the newspapers wasn't true. So Sue Monfils basically said her husband, she told the police that he was in a catch-22 since he reported another union member for theft. He would be kicked out of the union and lose his job, since James River was a closed union shop. So again, Keith Kutzka is claiming innocence, that he did not take the cord. So because of that, since they found out that Monfils was the person that his voice had been on the tape, that he would have to be kicked out of the union for doing that. Do you think that would have happened?
I have no idea. I don't know enough about union policies. I don't like that policy, if that is true. I mean, so they're basically saying that you can't make a complaint about another union employee. It's kind of just swept under the rug if somebody's doing something wrong just because they're a member of a union. That's what I got.
Well, remember, Keith claimed to be innocent, and so it would be that Tom was making up lies about
Right.
Keith, trying to get him fired.
Yeah.
And that's why he'd be kicked out of the union.
Yeah, I don't know. But the bigger thing there, though, is regardless of Tom making that allegation and not being able to prove if Keith took the cord, Keith still just blew past security. That's totally a violation.
Yeah, the book mentioned that everyone more or less knew that Keith was lying about, having not taken the cord.
Yeah.
Because he would have just shown his bag, had he not been guilty, obviously.
Right. Well, and as much as I was kind of ripping on Tom before, there's also extreme dislike that I have for Keith. I can't stand how he doesn't admit that he took it. I mean, he's a liar. He's a flat out liar. And it reminds me, I was watching Seinfeld the other day, and do you remember the story arc where they're shooting the pilot with NBC? And
vaguely, yeah.
Okay. And the guy who auditioned to play Kramer, when he came into audition, he stole a box of raisins that was sitting on the table.
Yeah.
And then George spends like the next few episodes trying to see if he took it, because he really believes he took the raisins, and the guy doesn't admit it. And I was watching it like a few weeks ago, and I'm like, this is just like the Keith Kutzka thing. And so I knew I wanted to mention this here, and I'll tell you, just like Keith, and how I can't stand him lying about it. I couldn't stand the guy from Seinfeld lying about it. I hate people who won't admit the truth. And I cannot stand that with Keith. I really lost a lot of respect for him with the way that he handled this situation. I cannot stand people who pretend to be a victim when they are the complete opposite of a victim. Hate it. Can't stand it.
The book mentioned that Keith had a particular tattoo. What was that tattoo?
Yeah, and it said "Born to Win" with some dice on his shoulder, and that it's really funny that they include that because it really gives you a good idea of kind of just the ego that Keith must have had. That's really what it is about to me, is that he had a huge ego. How dare somebody turn me in and get me in trouble? It just drives me crazy the way that he handled this situation where, and again, if he was innocent, it'd be another story. But he wasn't. He did take it. He did lie, and that's what I hate about him. I cannot stand it.
So Sue Monfils also told the police that she thought suicide was possible in regards to Monfils because his life is the mill. What do you find that strange?
Yeah, I do find that strange. There's another comment from another coworker where he kind of affirmed my view that I was getting of Tom, that he placed more importance on the job than his own family. And I'll try to find it here. Oh, here it is. The coworker said that he spoke of Monfils' mixed up priorities, saying that Monfils' job was first on his list, with his children probably fourth and his wife fifth. And that's the impression I got too with Tom, is that I don't know why that was, that the job was such a big deal to him. That's odd, though. The job should not be number one. I mean, it should be important from the standpoint of being able to keep it and provide for the family. But I don't know. I just don't get an impression that he was like a family guy.
Stories of mill supervisors and managers taking boxes of tissues were not uncommon, the chapter states. I just wanted to bring that back up from when we talked in the first episode when I mentioned that I was a security guard at a paper mill. And the night that, one of the nights late at night, I'm fairly certain I was witnessing a theft. At the time, I didn't know it was a theft. I just thought someone was moving boxes and they needed help. Later on, after reflecting, I kind of put two and two together that I think I helped someone steal. But this was not uncommon, to load you're loading your car up with boxes and boxes of tissues.
Yeah,
Monfils.
I'd like to just interject real quick. Something that I got from this chapter too was security seemed effectively useless in many ways at that place, because not only did they really do nothing when Keith didn't stop for them, but they also mention in the book how Tom used the first line of parking spots right up against the building in the wintertime, because there were electrical outlets, and they would use those to power up a engine heater so that company vehicles could keep the engine warm so they'd be ready to go in the cold winters. Well, Tom would often use an empty spot to keep his engine warm for his personal vehicle. And they make a point in the book that this was right by the security office, this spot, so security had to have known that was happening, and evidently they did nothing about it. So, to me, it just reminded me of your story that you just brought up again. You were a security guard. You didn't do anything about that. And evidently these security guards didn't really seem to do much either.
Yeah, it was the summer of '96, so it's not even it's pretty much in the same time frame as Monfils in '92. So yeah, from my perspective, the security guards, we weren't getting paid. We were getting paid minimum wage, and you're only gonna work as hard as minimum wage.
So collect a check and not do your job. Got it.
Yeah, play Game Boy is what I did most of the time. They actually had a ban Game Boy just based off of me. So.
What's remembered lives. Losing someone precious from our lives is the most painful event that one can endure. Seasons of Life Memorials is dedicated to making sure the person you lost is never forgotten. We work with you to help you craft a film about your loved one's life that can be viewed at the gravesite. We can also help you create a film about your very own life that can be viewed in the obituary section of your hometown newspaper. Imagine that, your friends, relatives, and neighbors viewing your own unique story and how your life truly did matter. Visit our website, seasonsoflifememorials.com, and follow us on social media today to start viewing what we can do for you.
Monfils had a dark sense of humor. He would post newspaper articles of other guys' misfortunes on employee bulletin boards. And in particular, he did this with drunken driving notices that would appear in the newspaper. And he would add his own commentary to the drunken driving notice. What is that? How does that strike you?
Yeah, I'll say about that. To me, that's not necessarily an indication that that was his sense of humor. To me, it indicates more that he had some issues. Like, I mean, was he laughing about this stuff? I don't know. They don't really say in the book. So to me, that's not really a sense of humor. To me, that's more of he has bizarre interests, and I don't know. He might be a little off in some ways.
Well, Tom had two coworkers who were married, Steve and Gene Stein, who both worked at James River, and they had actually had a premature baby. And the Green Bay Press-Gazette wrote a story about them, and Tom took that story and made hurtful alterations, which caused him to almost lose his job. But Steve actually saved his job, telling mill management, just make sure that Tom gets some help. What do you think that says about Tom's mental state?
I don't know. I mean, as far as like a diagnosis, I have no idea. But again, something was off there. And just to reiterate, we were talking about likability of him. Well, that's not really going to help him out. This kind of stuff with posting kind of embarrassing or things that people are not going to be proud of, posting these things on the bulletin board for the whole company to see, that's not going to get you any friends. So it's not surprising to me one bit that a lot of people would find him to be odd or just plain not like him. I mean, there was even one worker who said that he transferred to a different department because he wanted to get away from Tom Monfils.
New episodes of the Monfils 6 podcast drop every other Friday. Please join us again. Thanks for listening.
Have you recently lost a loved one and want to hold on to their memory forever? Would you like all of the world to view what their life had been about? Seasons of Life Memorials is what you are looking for. We create individual and unique documentary shorts that will allow anyone visiting the gravesite to view the documentary and your memories of the loved one. Contact us today to set up an appointment at seasonsoflifememorials.com.